All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and today is Monday, the 14th of May, and we'll go over some technicals. We'll talk about today's option activity, talk about some other things that happened in today's marketplace, but kind of a quiet Monday. I would say, the futures were up about 35 basis points. At the height of the pre-market session, we could not get above that level for the day. We rallied actually in the first hour of the day, but we could not take out that high. That was kind of the signal of the day that to kind of take your profits and move on and don't overtrade today. And sometimes that's the biggest lesson, to kind of learn. I do my best to read the tape every day and to point out some really good signals. But you can see how this lined up today. Where am I? So the high of the day was at 10:30, and notice the VIX was at the lows, and the VIX started to move up. I think we got into the 12 handle. We got to a 1280. So I very much will use the VIX in conjunction with what we're doing on the day. And if we start to hit a low of the day and then a green bar right at the high, green bar in the VIX, and we're at the high of the day, it kind of tells you that you have more of a choppy day. So I wouldn't read too much into today's price action. The fact that we did close, oops, I don't know why that was so loud, that we did close, close to the lows of the day. I think after last week, we had a really nice week. We were up, well over 2% in all of the major indices in the U.S. The inflows that we saw last week, just heavy into the technology. Sorry, I'm just trying to bring up the stall as I bring up the newsletter. But there was $10.7 billion of U.S. equity inflows last week, so that's running really hot. It's almost like a contrarian sell signal, which we got last week, is just running a little bit too hot. And you could see that tech had $2.8 billion. It's a little bit too much, and it's a little bit too exuberant what we saw last week. So, some things kind of took a little bit of a rest. IGV, Ida George Victor. It's an ETF that I really like. It's a lot of software names. This was due for a little bit of a pullback. So what was this thing? This was the worst performing sector, I think, of the day. Again, running really hot. Made a 52-week high last week, but let this come in a little bit. So that's why basically, I didn't really want to trade too much today. I want to let things kind of digest a little bit. I think as long as things, digest a little bit, it's perfectly fine. Also, SMH, the semiconductor ETF, had some continuation today with what's going on with China and possible trade deals, but not the best looking candle. Finished well off the highs of the day. I'm still long it. I'll stay long it. Probably. I got in right on the first bar in the 200-day moving average. So now's the time where you want to go ahead and ratchet up your stop prices if you have cash. If you got in on cash positions, for me, the 50-day moving average will be the stop that I use now going forward on this. What else? I think also small caps gave us a little bit of a signal for the day. We hit I believe that's an all-time high, right, in the small cap ETF. IWM, but it's a pretty clear rejection of going higher here. And again, look at the swing that we've had. We've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can't have every day be a green day. So we'll see what this does afterwards. Let's hope that this kind of just digests a little bit. Maybe it checks all the way back to the 20-day moving average. But again, I think we've had really good outperformance the last week and a half. I think that's fully expected. The 1 hour bar, notice we did fall into value, so we'll have to get back above 159.74 for confirmation, and we'll see where we come back into small caps. Again, small caps I think are very important because they are a leading indicator. What else happened today? The solar names continue to rally. That's the TAN ETF. We did see a little bit of call buying in First Solar today, so. This has been one of the strongest sectors. This was one of the best performing sectors last week. You're going to be hitting resistance here. So again, I think a good place if you've been long this group, maybe take a little bit of profits as you hit that as you return to the 52-week high. Retail, we'll see what happens. We get a lot of names, could be a little bit of short covering going into some of the retail names that are reporting earnings, but I think one of the best looking charts, considering I think a lot of things are oversold, are overbought. And I'll go through a couple more of these charts, but I think XRT, maybe for a couple more days. Tomorrow there is retail sales, so we'll see how that gets affected. But you've got Home Depot reports tomorrow, you've got Walmart, and then you get into names like Urban, which saw some calls go up today. So, you could see a little bit of short covering, and maybe this rallies a little bit further. I do have a limited risk reversal on in XRT. So I'll talk today about option activity. I'll talk about the gaming names. Oh, before I finish, as I'm going from one subject to the other, but just to talk about the software names, right? I mean, Adobe got really ahead of itself. 52-week high last week. I just wanted to kind of hammer home this point. Vive, I was making a point I was long Vive last week for a swing. Worked out great. I may have unwound it a day early, but that's fine. I have no exposure here on the pullback. I was long 3 or 4 of these names, NT and X, and I got out of them all last week. Again, not everyone right on the high, but again, it's almost impossible to get the exact high, out of these names. Splunk was another name that I was in. So let these names come back in, and then you kind of reload and you go long again. So. Red Hat, I think, was one of the names I was most interested in today because it fell 4.4% today. Again, you got support, so we'll see if maybe it has an inside day tomorrow. We'll see, but you got to give these things a little bit of time, have them come into you, and then wait for a little bit of confirmation that the profit taking is basically through. So the option activity for the day. I'll bring that up. Just keep in mind, I thought today's option activity was great, but, if you only watch the option activity and that's it, that's, I say this all the time in almost every video, that option activity is a great indicator, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. You're really not going to go too far if you're only looking at option activity. That's, first of all, we see a huge amount of trades on a day-to-day basis. But if there's not momentum in the market, if there's not true buying, some of these names are not going to go too far, right? I mean, I thought the Urban one was pretty good. I took this trade, some June 1st calls. Now, again, this could be centered around earnings. They do report earnings in a couple weeks, so we never know why they're buying, but it looks like this is trying to come out and come out to a 52-week high, almost an MACD crossover. So it really depends what you want to do. This is kind of a tough one because this is a higher implied volatility name, but on a number of other names they kind of fell flat a little bit. So, and Hess calls. We're going to also see this week is option expiration, so we're going to see a lot of trades get rolled from May to June. Excuse me, I knew I was going to sneeze there. But you're going to see a lot of positions that are being rolled, and a lot of positions with open interest. I thought this was also another interesting trade. PAA, another interesting chart. May options. There's no way I want to own May options at this point. So a lot of things are going to be rolled. Talking about the gaming stocks, I did have one of these in my weekend report that gets sent out to members. Boyd Gaming Group I thought was particularly interesting. So on the best ideas list, also GBT. I did take GBT. This didn't go anywhere today. I kind of chased a little bit, so it did end up a little bit higher. But Boyd Gaming, I just thought the chart setup looked pretty good in this, and pop it went on the Supreme Court. I believe the story is that they're getting rid of the sports betting ban. So a couple of these stocks should do pretty well. A couple of these names, sometimes it is a little bit of buy the rumor, sell the news. So, but certain names I think are going to do better than others. Caesars, we saw a lot of rolling of positions. Again, off the highs of the pop. SGMS was another name that did pretty well today. I didn't see where it closed. But, oops, I got the wrong symbol in there. That's why. SGMS, pretty big looking candle there. Also, IGT is another name that pops on this stuff. Names like Win, are probably not going to do well on this because, they stand to possibly lose a little bit. They're one of the ones that have a sports book that I've frequently visited when I've been out in Vegas before. So if everyone else is getting, is going to be able to legally gamble, then there's less of there's less of a need to go out to Vegas, if that's what your thing is, to go out to Vegas for sports betting. So not to say that they're going to lose badly on that, but they're just not going to move up on that story. I would think. So other names that saw option activity that I thought might have been a little bit interesting today. There's been a PVG buyer in there. There was some Teva calls. Teva had a nice day. Akamai was a nice August call buyer. Went out a little bit further in this one. Again, some of these names, there's just not the right time to kind of go after. I think in Akamai or Vive, even though those were June, let these come in a little bit. These names, as I said in the beginning of the video. Same thing with Square. So it's okay to kind of look, watch some of these trades go up and just write them down in your notebook and say, okay, that's interesting. Somebody's doing a little bit of accumulation. Again, most of these trades are not huge, colossal trades either. So some of these trades that you see on the tape, obviously AMD did pretty well today, but some of these smaller trades you can just kind of keep in your notebook and say, hey, they were doing some accumulation today. Let me go ahead and put this on my watch list and maybe buy when the overall market is down a little bit more, or like I said, let these names come into you a little bit more. All right, so that's it for today's video. Again, the patience word, right? Sometimes it's the best things that you can learn to do in this market is just sit on your hands a little bit and not over trade and not give back. Last week was a huge week for a lot of Tribeca Trade members as well as myself. Don't give it back on days that we're just kind of chopping around and there aren't good signals. You have to play it like just like poker. Again, I was just in Vegas, so I've got Vegas still on the mind. But you gotta trade like you're playing poker, like the good poker players, where they do not play every hand. So today wasn't really a great day to trade, to basically to play the hand. So we're gonna get that, I think, a couple days this week, but maybe not every day this week. So that's it for today's video. Have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow in the trading room. Thanks.